Well, start recording. Hi, y'all. I'm very excited this evening to introduce you to Loor Awwad, who I met via our wonderful mutual friend Shivangi. Loor is currently getting her Post Grad in curating culture leadership at Sydney University.
UNSW.
Yes, thank you. And she is originally from Palestine, lived in Palestine for 27 years. Is that what you told me? Yes. So she has agreed to chat with me about what's going on here in Australia, but also her knowledge around Palestine too, which is so great. So thank you so much for talking to me today, Loor.
Happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Before we talk about the current pandemic, tell me a little bit more about yourself and what you are currently researching, and also where you're from and what brought you to Australia.
Yes, well, my name is Loor. I just turned 31 very recently. I've been living in Australia for 3 years now, 3.5 years. I lived in Palestine for most of my life. My partner and I immigrated here, like I said, 3 years ago, just to kind of try to find better opportunities for ourselves. We lived our entire lives under occupation, military occupation. So we were definitely like two of the most fortunate Palestinians to live in Palestine. We come from middle-class families. We had it good. We went to private schools and we got much better opportunities than most Palestinians do or did. So, but we did have an opportunity to immigrate here, and we decided to come live here, give it a go, and yeah, that's how we ended up in Australia. Started off in Newcastle, and now we're in Sydney because I'm doing my, like you said, my postgrad in curating and cultural leadership.
Yes, and you're currently in Canberra, which is great news for you, because I believe Canberra is one of, so as we were just mentioning, Canberra is one of the current territories that does not have COVID-19, whereas in New South Wales, well, where I am, and of course Victoria are just really being hit with cases in the last month, which is a big change. So I'm glad you're safe.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad I'm safe too, and I hope Newcastle kind of calms down soon as well.
Yeah, me too. There's no place I'd rather be than my house having this conversation with you right now, so I feel good.
Agreed, same here.
Very cool. Well, tell me a little bit about, I haven't interviewed that many people in Australia, actually. So tell me a little bit first about how the coronavirus affected you and how your life changed once it came along.
Oh dear, where do I start? So first off, I'm like terrified of getting sick on a very good day. So adapting to the whole corona situation has been a bit intense, and I do agree with you. Being in Canberra right now is very soothing to my nerves because I don't think I would have been able to handle Sydney at the moment, especially since I think our local supermarket had a case detected the other day.
All right.
And I was just like, my stomach was in knots. I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to go back to Sydney. Like, but yeah, it's, I actually moved from Newcastle. Newcastle, we had a nice little house in Wickham.
Oh, that's right near where I am. I love Wickham. Cool. Yeah, I'm in Newcastle West.
I love that area. Close to Masamaje. You can't get better pizza.
That's right. We walk to pick it up and take it home. Yep. That's
right. Cool. Same. We must have been neighbors, I think.
We must have. Yeah. I think so.
That's crazy. But yeah, so we moved to Sydney because I got into the art program that I wanted, and we had just settled in, and 1 month later lockdown happens. So I was really looking forward to uni. I was looking forward to meeting new people, to creating my network, professional network in Australia, but that kind of went out the window after 1 month. But I've been doing like online classes for the last what is it now, 5 months? Yeah, it's been a challenge, but I've been trying to make the best out of it, I think. And
And I think Sydney, like Newcastle, because we were in the same state. You could maybe just elaborate a little bit of what lockdown looked like for Australia, and then I'll ask you a little bit about what you knew about Palestine as
Yeah,
well.
sure. I think so we were in Sydney when lockdown started, and we just kind of stuck to staying in our apartment day in and day out.
Right.
We only left to go to the supermarket, just buy our groceries and then come back home. We were surprised one day when the building fire alarm went off.
Oh, yeah.
And we just ran outside the apartment. It was a false alarm, but we were shocked to see that there were actual people walking around in the streets. I think we had been in the apartment for maybe 7 days straight. We kind of forgot that stuff was happening out there. So there were people out and about, not that many, but still, for me personally, it's mostly just staying at home. Even in Canberra, I don't leave unless I really have to. Because you kind of never know. So, even if you know that you've not been in contact with a lot of people, or that you know that you're not carrying the virus or anything, it's you never know where people have been. And so I'm staying with family, and they're a bit older than I am, and I wouldn't want to kind of risk or just risk infecting them basically. So
cool.
Been staying home mostly.
And I think in both and all of New South Wales, you were able to go out for exercise. You could get takeaway coffees. It wasn't as extreme as what Victoria is going through now. So Victoria, which anyone who's not familiar with Australia, is where Melbourne is, and where I think the most intense lockdown restrictions are happening, where you can only go to the shops. There's a curfew, I think. So we did quite well for pretty lax restrictions, but there was probably a lot of people like yourself, and I was the same way. I was really not into going out more than I had to. So
exactly.
So,
nothing more than you absolutely have to.
Yes. And now, so to take it to a completely different part of the world, tell me, so I'm sure you have family back in Palestine still.
Yeah, my whole family is there, actually.
Right. So, and I'm just reading, it's ranked 76th in the world. It looks like Australia's actually had, at least according to official data, more cases in Palestine. So what, tell me what's happening.
I think with the spiral in Melbourne at the moment, it's kind of hard to beat. And plus, we're a much smaller nation in terms of size and population. So actually, Palestine was doing really well for quite some time. So actually, curfews are not really a new concept for Palestine. During 2002, we stayed in Ramallah. We were under curfew for over 6 months, and we were only allowed to leave, I think, once every 3-4 weeks. We would have 12 hours where we can go and buy our groceries. So we're kind of used to it. It's nothing.
Are you serious?
New. Yeah. Ramallah was actually under siege by Israel. So we had tanks and infantry. So it was a whole military situation, and we were under curfew for about 6 months.
And this is the city where you lived.
Yeah. It's one of the cities that didn't have it so bad at the time.
Okay. And what was the name of that city? Sorry? What was the name of that city?
Ramallah.
Okay, right.
Ramallah.
Okay, all right. Right, so you have experienced far more extreme lockdowns in Palestine. Right.
Yeah, and a tad more life-threatening as well. So this is kind of okay, nothing's so if you don't go out, you probably won't get hit.
Right.
But so it's really nothing that is that new as a concept to Palestinians. Curfew, we've done it before so many times. But people were very what's the word? People did kind of agree to the conditions that the government had implemented, and people were actually being very vigilant about it. But the problem is we have a really bad economy, and we couldn't afford lockdown for prolonged periods of time because people were actually like going hungry.
Yeah.
They needed to work. A lot of people depend on wages rather than salaries. And when you're not accessing your work every day and you're not doing your hours every day, basically you don't get any money. And it's a horrifying situation. And a lot of people had to deal with it. So past a certain point, things went a bit south, and it's actually, the situation there is quite bad at the moment.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of, and plus I think it's also cultural, because we have social events are like, it's a different dimension than what they are in Australia. So weddings are massive, funerals are massive. It's people come together in moments of happiness and sadness, and it's just an overwhelming number of people, and that kind of contributed to the spread.
Okay.
So we've had a lot of cities that had much higher rates, and it kind of spread everywhere. And I think at this point in time, it's not looking that good.
Right.
In Palestine, I think there's an increase in the cases. I think case numbers have dropped the last couple of days, but the Minister of Health said that it was mainly because some of the machines that they were using for testing were malfunctioning.
Okay. Right.
And so it's not.
I should know this. I should have looked this up beforehand. But approximately, how many?
It keeps changing, Alex, as well. It's like, I think a day and a night can make all the difference.
Sure. But in terms of population of Palestine, how many people are there in a whole? Is it a couple million, or?
I think at this point in, like, West Bank and Gaza, I think it's around 6 or 4 million.
Okay, right. Sure. Okay. No, I'll just look it up right now. I have the wonders of the internet right here.
Yay.
Right. So it's 4 to 6 million. That's quite a few people. Population density 5.5 million 2020 estimate. Right.
Okay, so right in the middle.
Yeah, that's quite
and
a
Gaza
lot.
is actually the most densely populated place in the world.
Okay, wow, right. Imagine. And it's not a huge amount of land, is it?
No, and it's ever shrinking.
Yes, right, because of the conflict.
It's ever shrinking, and people cannot it just keeps getting smaller and smaller.
Right. Interesting. Do you find, so I know some of the most vaguest, broadest generalizations about like the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Do you think that, and I interviewed my dear friend Amir, who's currently trapped in Israel, cannot get back to Australia. He's Israeli, but he's got his daughter and granddaughter are there, but his life is here in Australia, and his wife is. But it sounded to me that I know that there's a bit of unrest in Israel as well. And he was telling me how there's a lot of wars going on at any given time all over the place. So I'm wondering, like, does that civil unrest, do you think that plays a role in how people in Palestine, and do you think that makes people more likely to stay in and to meet curfew and stuff like that?
To tell you the truth, I think it could go either way. I think it's a bit beyond civil unrest as well. It's a lot. It's the West Bank and Gaza have been under military occupation since 1967.
So they're at war.
It's military occupation. Like as a kid, I grew up with machine guns in my face, kind of thing. So it's a lot more intense.
Right.
Like I think it's kind of normalized to us because we kind of grew up with it, and all of my friends have. It's nothing special. It's that kind of thing. Like I feel people in Australia get shocked when I tell them.
Yeah, but no child should have guns in their face.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course
it breaks my heart to hear that's normalized for you, but
it's very normalized. We grew up with soldiers everywhere and checkpoints even if we're talking just about like the West Bank in itself. There's checkpoints all over. We can't travel between cities. We can't almost do anything. I've had grenades fly over my car, like not just once. And I ended up going to a pool party straight after. It's that normalized. Like, and I'm one of the people who haven't suffered like the worst of it, to tell you the truth. It's it's a bit much. It's a very tense situation, and it's I think it's the kind of place where you kind of have to see it in order to fully absorb the situation and all its implications. It's very intense, and I feel like with coronavirus things are only getting worse.
Right.
There has been some cooperations, I think, on the medical level, but it's a lot, and it's really hard. So everything that comes in or out of Palestine kind of has to go through Israel, and it makes things much more difficult.
Okay.
As well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And why is that?
Just because things don't necessarily have to go through certain procedures for them to go from beginning to end.
Right.
A lot of contingency, like there's a lot of room for contingency to happen. And it's just not, it's not a structured place. You don't know what to expect. Surprises pop in, most of them unpleasant. And with Corona, you can only imagine, it's just made everything like 10 times worse.
Sure. Well, I do think it's not, well, my friend from Israel was going to protest, actually, even as the virus was continuing to spread, and he was wearing masks. But I think a lot of Israelis are unhappy as well with the current government situation. So I hopefully...
I think there are still protests happening, like protesting Netanyahu's policies and everything. So I think it's still going on at this moment.
I would imagine it's like there's this coronavirus which is at the forefront. It's like that must be dealt with, but there's years and violence and militarization and stuff like that above that. So there's so many things going on, as you said.
It's a lot.
So did Palestine go under lockdown the same way that Australia has?
They did the virus? They did for a while. I think it was under full lockdown for 2 months, where people were basically asked to stay at home the whole time. But then the cases were extremely low. There weren't any new infections, and things were kind of looking peachy and pretty, and people were happy and proud of themselves. Because to tell you the truth, I think with Corona, there's an interesting aspect, that kind of experience that happened with a lot of Palestinians, is that we're usually never part of anything that happens around the world. Things happen and we just observe it from afar. We're never part of the World Cup. We never play in anything. We're just people are experiencing stuff, and we're just observers of what's happening. But for the first time, I think we felt kind of involved in something, that we were kind of part of what was happening around the world. And people were really proud of the achievements that they were making, and they were proud of the fact that the infection rates were dropping, and that we were managing it quite well. But unfortunately, when the second wave hit, it was a lot, and people were finding it very hard to stay at home, and mainly for economic reasons. Because it's very few people can actually live off their savings if they have any. It's the economic situation is very difficult, and I think that people, the main reason why people broke lockdown and curfew, and even the government is very hesitant in implementing full-on lockdown now because of this. Because economically people cannot survive.
And I'm guessing that unlike Australia and the United States, there was any type of government support or financial support for people to stay home.
No, we don't have a welfare system. So if you're unemployed, you're on your own, kind of.
And can you tell me a little bit about what the healthcare is like for Palestine?
It's not the best. I think we try our best, but we don't have enough facilities. We don't have enough experts. We don't have enough access to proper medical equipment. We do have some, and I think with what we've got, doctors and nurses are doing a great job. It's just there's lack of resources in general, financially, and in terms of equipment, and in terms of human capital as well. So it's a bit rough.
Right.
And I'm sure that hospitals at the moment are very overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like when the second peak came along, the hospitals in Hebron were actually, Hebron is another city in Palestine. They were flooding with people.
Right.
Doctors and nurses in between shifts were having breakdowns. It was so intense because they were so under-resourced on so many levels as well. But I think with what we've got, we've been giving it our best.
Yeah. So you reckon, so despite the fact that it's ranked so low in the world, you reckon it's not being documented perhaps as accurately, or you wonder maybe?
I think maybe compared to other places in terms of numbers, maybe it's not that insane, but just in terms of the under-resourcing and the panic and also because it's a very locked place.
Right.
And it's very densely populated. Like I think the whole of the West Bank is smaller than Sydney.
Okay.
It's in terms of area, or it's this, or it's of similar size.
Right.
And you're talking about millions upon millions of people who are living there and who are kind of trapped there as well. I think the fear mostly is of a massive breakdown where there would be absolutely no control. And the number of deaths would be staggering at that point, I think. So the worst case scenario, I think, is really, really bad. And that's what people are kind of really scared of.
And you were mentioning, I was mentioning how I don't know exactly when I'll be able to go back to the States next. And you were saying you feel the same way because your family's all over there. When was the last time you went to Palestine? And when do you think you might be able to go? Or what would entail going back?
Last time I went was April last year.
Okay.
So April 2019. I was hoping to go back in April 2020, but that didn't happen. Honestly, as soon as they open international flights, I'm hopping on a plane.
Really? Okay. Right.
Yeah, the moment they do, I'm booking my flight and I'm going. I miss my parents. I miss my family. I haven't seen them in such a long time. And I'm very close to them, so it's been a bit hard.
I have thought about that as well, because I think that it may not be as easy to get to Palestine as it is to get to the United States. I think there are still flights going to the United States, but I would still, obviously my life is here, so I would still want to come back, and then I would have to pay $3,000 the quarantine and all of that stuff. So it's just like, it's definitely an epic thing. So it's not as easy to get to Palestine as it might be to get to London or something like that.
No, definitely not. We don't have an airport. First of all, so we don't.
There's no airport in Palestine.
No.
Okay.
We are not allowed to have an airport.
Okay.
It's literally that. We're not allowed to have an airport in Palestine by Israel. So what we have to do is that we have to travel to Jordan.
Okay.
Which we share borders with.
Okay.
And then from Jordan, we would have to travel to Palestine by land.
Right. And how long does that take?
Oh, it depends. That's a loaded question.
Okay.
Because nothing is face value in Palestine, I'm telling you. It depends. It could go on from 12 hours to just 2.
Okay.
It depends. I have had nights where times where I've actually had people who were on the bus with me who had to sleep the night in the bus station to make it to the
right.
It's insane. So it could take any time between a couple of days or if you're really lucky, or if you can afford to travel with VIP services, then you get to cross the border in just a couple of hours.
This is so not, like I said, and I told you before the interview, it has been so good talking to both you and Amir and hopefully some other people as well, because this is just, it's like, there's lots of parts of the world that I'm quite invested in. It's just not something that I've learned as much about as I should. But could you not fly from Israel?
No.
No?
No. We're not allowed to. So the thing is, some Palestinians do get special permits, but you need to have you need to get security clearance, and security clearance doesn't necessarily have to be, you don't have to necessarily be a direct threat. It just might be whatever it is.
Right.
it doesn't have to be a concrete reason for them to kind of reject your permit. It just, odds are you're not going to get it, basically. And very few people do get permits to travel from the Israeli airport. Some people do. It's not like it's completely like unheard of, but it's just not common.
So
like,
even
not common for the majority.
So even though Palestine and Israel share a lot of borders, it is very uncommon for Palestinians to enter Israel.
No, that's a different question.
Okay, sorry. This is the airport. Sorry. Well, tell me, is that?
Yeah. No, I know. I'm just joking.
Yeah. But no.
That's a completely different thing. Okay. So a lot of Palestinian workers work in Israel.
Okay.
Because they have opportunities of, there's more work opportunities there, and the pay is much better because our economic situation is much worse in Palestine. So there is a large number of Palestinian workers who do in Israel, and other Palestinians as well get permits to go to the beach. So it's kind of, just because I think it's been going on for so long, we've developed this kind of messed up relationship of some sorts, because it's very strange. So Palestinians do have access to, Palestinians over 45, let's put it that way, can access, can cross the checkpoint to go into Jerusalem, which is technically supposed to be, like Eastern Jerusalem is technically supposed to be Palestine, but we don't have access to it because there's plenty of checkpoints that just tell you to turn back and go back home. So Palestinians over 45 can go to Al-Aqsa Mosque to pray, and for the sole reason of praying. If you get caught anywhere outside of that kind of prayer area or zone, you kind of get a ride in the military jeep and kicked into the Palestinian side of things. So we're not really allowed to be there unless it's for business, unless it's for prayer that's exclusive to Fridays mostly, also, which is like the holy day for Muslims.
Right.
So it's a very complex
there's no way you're going to be able to explain it to me in this interview, but I didn't know any of that. And it's interesting because, I mean, of course, I was asking Amir about his experience in Israel and like what it's like there. But I mean, and he is telling me also about the other countries that are also like the whole area. So I think there's a lot of different things going on. But it's interesting because you grew up with this, and it sounds like you had a very different childhood to me.
It's kind of its own place, but to tell you the truth, also we do share a lot of like common experiences with other Arab countries. For example, Lebanon, and like what happened with Lebanon yesterday. In Lebanon yesterday was
the explosion
and catastrophic and like beyond anything. And they've also lived through civil wars and Israeli invasions, and so there is that kind of, I feel, also trauma that you can find in other places in the region as well. So it's it kind of makes you feel that you're not alone, and it's kind of okay, others have been through it. It's not just you.
I think that's a positive way to phrase it, Loor.
Yes, that's the only way we can think about it, actually. Otherwise, I think it would be just a bit much.
Of course. Was there, so all over the world, there have been protests for all kinds of different things, from Black Lives Matter to union workers to people who don't want to wear masks, which I'm also curious about if people were wearing masks in Palestine. That's a common
and gloves.
Mask and gloves.
Everyone looked like a surgeon.
Right. So they're masking up and wearing gloves. Have they been protesting much at all?
Well, there were a few protests that were taking place. Some of them were just kind of protests over the lockdown, which is, I guess, kind of common in other places around the world.
Now that we're seeing it, I think I saw a protest in Australia and against masks, actually,
yeah,
which sounds very. Anyway, so
there have been some protests regarding the lockdown. I don't agree with it. I think it's easy to kind of say that from my ivory tower in Australia kind of thing, but I do feel that people kind of need to stick to lockdown at least for a while longer. But I also kind of understand where people are coming from. They just don't want their kids to go hungry. It's that bad. Like it's literally that bad. People kind of just are on a day-to-day basis in terms of the incomes that come into their homes. So there have been a few protests surrounding that issue as well. And I think in terms of protests, we've had a few. We've had protests against domestic violence because with Corona and everything that's happening, I'm sure that domestic violence is spiraling across the world. So I am proud that Palestinian women and men are taking to the streets, and the protests were actually people in their cars wearing masks and gloves and kind of honking and just kind of making sounds with pots and pans and that kind of thing. So it was fairly safe, and people were trying their best to kind of be careful and be cautious and just make sure that they're not harming anyone along the way. So that I'm not happy at all about the domestic violence issues that are taking place, but I'm very proud that people are refusing to take it, and that they are, regardless of everything that's happening, they are pointing to the fact that this is a very important issue, and the safety of our women and men are of the essence at this point in time.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I am hearing, one of the first interviews I did was my friend David. He's a journalist in Shanghai, and an ongoing situation in every single part of the world is just when you're spending more time with the same person in a space is the rates rise. So
and violent people are going to be violent people, and they're just going to be aggravated more and more by the fact that they can't do things their way, and they're just going to take it out on someone who they can't take it out on, basically.
But that's interesting. So there have been protests in Palestine against domestic violence specifically. I have not heard of a protest against that. I think maybe I'm reading about Turkey. I think some things might be happening with femicide in Turkey, and I will check that. I will check that before I post it. But in some ways, that's really interesting. That is on a lot of people's
really
mind.
Important to kind of bring that into the light, especially with everything that happens. These issues kind of get swept under the rug because there are more important things happening, and people are dying from the virus and blah blah blah. But people are dying from domestic violence, and it is as important. Personally, I feel, especially since a lot of societies, I don't want to say in the Middle East, most societies around the world are very patriarchal, and women are not considered to be equals to men, and in times like these, this is only kind of aggravated and heightened up to crazy levels, and it just just leaving victims everywhere. It's
I mean, and just, I guess it's just a simple situational thing, and I think that it is one of many different situations that were suddenly like cause and effect that we weren't expecting. Like I think that I think that some of the reason that we're seeing such huge protest and rage in the United States, and obviously I'm not there, so kind of rich that I haven't lived there in 10 years, but I think when you are unemployed and you don't have a stable system to fall back on, it's like, do you sit at home or do you go out and you rage? And so, and that is, so we're going to continue, I think, to see all sorts of different causes and effects the pandemic is the seed that like cracks in the healthcare systems, all kinds of different things. And of course, if you're trapped in a house with someone all the time, I mean, I can see, just statistically speaking, there's more rates of danger and violence.
I think things are skyrocketing at the moment, and but I do think that with the pandemic, a lot of critical social and economic issues are coming to the surface.
Yeah, that was
just
my
forcibly. So yeah.
I was going to ask you kind of if what do you have any silver linings or observations? And I think that people who are from one place and living in another have a unique view on that. So I'd love to hear kind of what your thoughts on that are.
In terms of silver linings, I would say that the best thing that kind of happened with me with the pandemic would be that I got to spend more time with family here in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
It's been nice to have, so we've had issues with sharing the space in terms of, so my partner works full-time, I'm studying full-time. It was a bit tough to share a tiny apartment in Sydney, but
Sure.
it was nice to have him around for the whole day and just kind of have our breaks together. And so that was fun. I've also been spending time with family in Canberra too, so that's been nice. I also get to talk to my mom more frequently just because she's at home more often, and with the time difference, I just can't talk to her more often. I can't see her, but I can see her for the majority of the year anyway. So
yeah,
I think there's kind of a heightened sense of appreciation for loved ones and family and what they mean to you and what they represent to your life. I think that's my kind of main silver lining.
That's 100% true. I started calling my gran every Saturday
Yeah.
once the coronavirus happened, and now I can't believe that it's like, why did it take a global tragedy for me to call my freaking grandmother?
For that to happen.
You know, like I can't believe it, but I am so glad that I'm doing it.
It does put things into perspective, I feel, and you kind of try to focus on the people you love and the things that you like to do, and you kind of also start figuring out what you like to do as well, because you have the time. Otherwise, things are just like really busy and the days are super packed. They still are, but you still kind of have more leeway at home to do stuff that you wouldn't otherwise do, I guess.
100%. Yeah, I found that as well. I've always thought that I was a very social person, but I started doing a lot of yoga and I started doing these interviews, and I'm finding in some ways that I'm like, I still miss like going out and dancing and like feeling other people's energy. I really miss that a lot. But there's things that I didn't know about myself that this has forced me to realize. So that's been really interesting. So
I agree with you. I think it kind of provided us with some time to self-reflect and to kind of focus on things that we usually don't have time to focus on. I've read more. I've been reading more just because of uni, but I have been reading more for myself as well, which I'm happy about. It was a bit of a struggle to find time to read, just with life in general, I guess.
Isn't it great? We're becoming smarter. Like we're learning, you know what I mean? We're like, so it's when we have the luxury to do that, it's quite good. I don't want to take too much. I don't want to take too much of your time, Loor. You have given me some fascinating insights. I've just learned more in this last half hour than.
Thank you for having me so much.
Is there anything else you want to include or anything before I let you go?
Oh no, not really. Just thanks for the chat. I really enjoyed it, and it's been great talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Loor. That's great.